Hey everyone, welcome to the channel and another review. I just got back from seeing Family Camp at the theater, so let's talk about it. So in this movie, when two polar opposite families are forced to camp together, the dads struggle to hold on to their families and marriages as they compete to the coveted camp trophy, or compete for the coveted camp trophy. So my anticipation going into this film was literally non-existent. I saw that it was basically one of two new movies playing this weekend, so I didn't really check anything on it, mainly because there was nothing else to choose from. So I'm like, well, I'll go see that, and yeah, I prefer to go into movies blind as possible. So yeah, with that, let's jump into my thoughts on the film. So overall, I thought that the main family, there's two main families, but the main family is I thought they were pretty relatable as a whole, but at the same time, they come across as kind of that stereotypical family for this sort of film, where nothing's nothing's super perfect. They're sort of drifting apart. The parents are the mom's not happy because the dad is working too much, and then the mom doesn't feel close with her kids, and she's hoping that this magical, like this camping trip will be some magical experience, and she's just kind of naive. So like it's yeah, on one hand I didn't really care for that it was stereotypical, but on the other, they're still relatable that way. Like there's a reason that's stereotypical, and it's because people can relate. So I thought the most relatable was probably the dad. Like I definitely felt where he was coming from a lot of the times. Like yeah, work. He's got to work, and if he doesn't work, then nothing. Like you're not gonna have a roof over your heads. But it certainly he still had some lessons to learn, and that was one of the other things I liked about the film. I thought the message, it had a strong message at the end of the day. Strong enough for this sort of movie. It kind of hits you over the head with it a little bit, and you kind of see it coming. But sometimes you just want a straightforward movie, and if that's what you're looking for, that's what this movie is gonna be. Just kind of a simple, lighthearted, relatively fun movie. So the comedy was sort of hit or miss for me. I chuckled a couple times, but there were other people in the auditorium that were laughing a lot more than me. So I think it may just depend on your kind of comedic tastes. And then the last thing that I thought that I really liked was some of the shots of just the landscapes were really gorgeous. So they're camping in this, I think it's like a national park, not it's yeah, and yeah, you get some really nice shots of it and the landscape in the movie. So I thought that those were nice to have in there. All right, so next let's go on to the things that I didn't really care for as much, and that can mainly just be summed up in stating or saying that this movie just feels like a Hallmark film and something you'd find on the Hallmark Channel. So all of the things that I don't really care for just kind of get summed up in that, and they're, I think, what you can imagine from that. But going into specific details, I think it just felt like a cable movie at the end of the day, and not one that was really one that I needed to be in theaters, and certainly not one that I needed to see in theaters. It's relatively low budget. That definitely comes across in some of the CGI. They got some CGI beavers that don't look like, they just feel very out of place for the film, and then I don't think they add too much to it. But otherwise, this might be a nitpick because, you're going to get this in, any sort of comedy, but there's a lot of there's a lot of actual criminal activity insofar as assault and that sort of thing. Like we recently had, Will Smith slap Chris Rock live on TV, and that's considered assault. Chris Rock didn't press charges, but that's all it takes, and that's a very topical example. But I don't know, we never really think about it in films like this. But I wasn't really enjoying it all that much, so I think that's why my brain started to process that. These are two strangers that are two families that are then staying together under one roof in very close quarters, but they just met that week, and then a few days later you got them taking shots, doing a full kick to the chest. I'm like, That's straight up assault for no good reason. And then you've got other characters like tying up people just because in the middle of the woods, leave them out there to die, even put like honey on them so that the creatures come just because they tried to steal their four-wheelers. That is not an appropriate response. And, those people should probably go to jail. But like the movie never actually deals with that. But hey, those are the things my mind wanders off to when it's not all that entertained. So I'm sure there are other movies that I should make those criticisms of, but I don't because they're entertaining in other ways. But hey, we're here on this movie, and that's what I was thinking about while watching this film. So yeah, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on this film. It's all right. Overall, it was pretty meh for me. I would give it a letter grade of a D again. It wasn't bad. I mean, I recognize that it's most likely a low budget film. I didn't look up its budget, but I can assume as much. They're actors. Not any actors that I recognize. Not anybody that's super popular, unless they are, and I just didn't know. But it's relatively low budget. Just feels like a Hallmark sort of movie, and I think that's all it was trying to be. So it's nothing against the movie. I think it achieves what it sets out to do, to be kind of just this sort of family fun movie, and tell the message that it has. But for me, that's not really all that entertaining, and so it's not one that I can necessarily recommend. But if you've seen everything else, it's the sort of film I would maybe watch if I had nothing else to do and I was at a hotel sifting through channels and it happened to be on. That's a circumstance that I think is appropriate, at least for my enjoyment, based off of my enjoyment of it. That's the sort of circumstance that I think is appropriate to watch this film. I wouldn't recommend going out to see it necessarily in theaters. It's certainly not one you need to see on the big screen. But that said, it still is a fun film at the end of the day. So if you've been able to see Family Camp, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Did you enjoy it a lot more than me, or did it kind of hit you the same as just being a kind of meh movie that felt, why is this in theaters instead of going directly to the Hallmark Channel? But with that concludes this review. If you've enjoyed this review, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews. And with that, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.